Hello DGens, welcome to Vivian, our new Ether Anomaly off-field damage support, Python lover, Giga Anomaly juicer. This girl, holy shit, there is just a ridiculous amount of like mechanical optimizations and like gameplay mindsets that you can adopt whilst playing with her. There's just no way I can cover all of it today, but let's get through as much as we can. So with that said, let's get inside of her. Alright, first up, let's talk about her kit and therefore the mindset when piloting her. So first of all, there are two types of stacks. We've got the inner stacks and the outer stacks. A whole bunch of different attacks generates the inner stacks. So for example, basic attack chain, you can see boom, 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 and we're going to get that third stack right there. And then we've got EX skill, I'm just going to tap it. Another 3 stacks there. Our ultimate, this one gives 5 stacks, which is the max amount of stacks you can hold. So 3 plus 5 should be 8. Classical overstacking, don't do that. All right, next is dodge counter. And as you can see, we are going to get 1 stack from all of that. Next, we've got the Clang Clang parry, just like that. Follow up attack, and we get an extra 2 stacks. And then lastly, we've got the chain attack. So you can see Vivian has 2 stacks right now. I'm going to enter chain. We're going to use Nicole and then Vivian. So keep an eye on her stacks. Boom, boom, boom. You can see plus 2 stacks right there. All right, so after generating those inner stacks, we then need to convert them to outer stacks. And the way that you do that is to get into your floating stance. Pretty much like this. I'm just going to use the basic attack chain and eventually I'm going to end up in this floating stance. So it's not very hard to get into your floating stance because every single one of those ways of generating inner stacks will eventually lead you to floating stance. So for example, if I just tap EX skill, boom, and I'm in floating stance. And from here, I need to tap basic attack to then do the dive. Now it's the dive that actually does the conversion from the inner stacks to the outer stacks. So let's do that again. I'm going to use my EX skill. I've got inner stacks, 3 of them, and then now I'm going to dive and it's going to convert into a maximum, of course, of 5 outer stacks. And then after we get some outer stacks, it doesn't matter 1 or 5 or whatever, as long as we have some, we switch to our other characters and we use EX skills. Boom, and you can see the outer stacks are being consumed. And so when those outer stacks are being consumed, you will see a bloom happen, which does extra damage according to the anomaly that is inflicted. So homeboy is frostburn, as you can see, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to EX skill and you're going to see a bloom. Boom. And what that's going to do is it's going to do some extra damage scaling off of Miyabi. And so that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. We want to be able to generate inner stacks and then convert them into outer stacks like this, and then swap into another character and consume it by using EX skills, just like that. The other way of consuming those stacks is actually to trigger attribute anomaly, like Frostburn. And so knowing all of this, the mindset would therefore be to cycle through the inner to outer stack conversion as fast as possible, and to essentially always maintain outer stacks. As long as you always have outer stacks, they're not 0, then you're all good. You could actually just take that philosophy and run with it and you will be playing Vivian fine. Now, there is a position where you can take 5 inner stacks and 5 outer stacks, and this is what that looks like. So I'm going to convert that. We have 5 outer stacks, and to get 5 inner stacks, we're going to use our ultimate. And then so we're going to have like 5 stacks, completely stacked. And that is what it looks like. And the reason to do this would be to blow it all during like a stun or a vulnerability or like a buffed up window. Now, what I will say is that in practice, unless you're going for like top 1% clears, I would just forget about this, right? Cycling through the inner stacks to the outer stacks and just maintaining the stacks without overstacking, just don't overstack, and you're pretty much going to be like 95% of the way there. All right, in that case, let's start talking about nuances. And the first one is animation canceling. Now, Vivian is really interesting because she actually has a built-in animation cancel. And so the general rule is, if Vivian is going to end up in the air, swap cancel it. And the reason is because if Vivian is in the air and you swap, then it actually procs the rest of the animation. It procs that dive and the conversion itself. And so specifically, starting off with the EX skill, this one can be completely animation canceled. So I can go tap, 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 like that. And you can see she's still doing the whole dive thing to get us those outer stacks over there. There is absolutely no reason why you should be watching all of this whilst playing as Vivian. You should be in another character doing other things. All right, the second one is ultimate. So the moment the ultimate finishes and you are able to swap out. So we were floating, swap out, and you can see she's going to do the dive on her own. She doesn't need us to hold her hand, guys. All right, the next one's a little tricky. We're going to get Clang Clang. And then you can see we'll go to do a follow-up attack, and then only after that follow-up attack finishes can we actually swap out. So let's do that again. Homeboy Clang Clang, and then I'm going to follow up attack. I'm in the air and I'm going to swap out, and you can see she's doing the whole dive thing again, getting us the outer stacks. And then the last one I've got today is dodge counter. This one is probably the most tricky because you need to attack again, and then you can see I'm ending up in the air. Dodge, counter, and then basic attack, and you can immediately swap out after that and see she's going to do the whole animation down to the dive. Now, out of all of them, I would say that the EX cancel is probably the one that's going to save you the most time, because holy crap, look at all of that. And so what I would say is don't memorize all of that, because it is just a little bit too much for our little nugget brains. And so what you should remember is that if it looks like your Vivian is going to float, then swap cancel. And so over time, you're going to learn all of the different combos of Vivian, and you're going to start remembering which combos are going to make you float into the air. And then after you learn all of those different combos, just remember to swap cancel out of all of them. That's probably the best way to learn this. Don't just rote learn it all. All right, and so the second thing is overstacking. It's essentially generating stacks that exceeds the maximum cap. So for example, we know that our E skill, our EX skill, this generates 3 inner stacks. And so if I was to use it again, it would go into 6 stacks, except we can't hold 6 stacks. We can only hold 5 stacks. So therefore we would waste 1 stack. So a pretty common case would be one that looks like this. We have EX skill up, we have ultimate up, and we have some outer stacks. And so what we could actually do here is use our EX skill and then convert all of the stacks. So I'm going to do that, and then use our basic attack just for illustrative purposes. You guys shouldn't be watching this whole animation. And you see now we have 4 stacks over here. After that, what we can do is essentially blow all of our stacks using our other characters. That's 1, 2, and then 1 more over here. And we can see Vivian has 0 stacks. And then from here, we can use ultimate and get 5 inner stacks, converting to outer stacks again. So just like that. And we have 5 outer stacks on Vivian. In this kind of scenario, I prefer to actually blow the ultimate first. But to blow the ultimate, to avoid overstacking in outer stacks, I would have to burn those first. So going into Nicole, and then maybe doing a little bit in Miyabi, we get that one over there, and then instantly ult. So that this thing is going to turn into inner stacks, and then we're going to swap cancel immediately, and that's eventually going to turn into outer stacks. Just like that. And then after that, we can just keep going, use up those stacks, whatever, change into Nicole, use ultimate, hopefully trigger some attribute anomaly, boom, 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 EX skill again, and you can see we are down, and then only now should we use the EX skill again to get a whole bunch of stacks. And the reason why I take this approach is because you can see we are now back up to 931 decibels. It means we are closer to our next ultimate. So generally speaking, I try to use the ultimate first before doing anything else to make sure that we can get closer to our next ultimate. Now, this isn't always going to be the best move, especially if you're going for like the high optimal gameplay. There are some people out there who are really good at using the stun windows and stacking all of this together. If you are one of those people, just ignore this advice. All of that said though, there is actually an oh shit button, and that oh shit button is actually dodge whilst we're going into the air. And so you can see we have 5 outer stacks, and we can use an EX skill to get another 3 inner stacks. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast EX skill, but I'm going to be like, oh shit, I actually have a whole bunch of outer stacks. I don't want to convert them because it's going to overstack on outer stack conversions. So I'm going to tap EX and then hold dodge, and you're going to see it's not going to convert. And I'm going to end up just like this. I'm going to float all the way down. We don't end up in the air. And now we have 3 inner stacks as well as 4 outer stacks. And so this means that we have actually managed to save a whole bunch of outer stack overstacking, and then switch back to our Miyabi, do whatever, and then get those stacks back down. And then after all of that, we can then take those stacks and convert them again. And so you can do the oh shit button anytime you're about to go into the air. So for example, we have 5 outer stacks. If I use my ult and let it go all the way through, it's going to give us 5 inner stacks and then convert to 5 outer stacks. So we've just completely wasted 5 stacks. So let's say I ult and I'm like stupid. I'm not stupid. I'm going to hold dodge now, and you're going to see I'm going to land on the ground, and now we have 10 stacks in total. And then from here, we can then start blowing out EX skills and doing the attribute anomalies to try to get those stacks down, and then eventually switch back and consume more stacks. All right, I know that was pretty dank, but in practice, as long as you're kind of like cycling through those stacks and just using them up as soon as you get them, you're gonna be fine. So don't worry about that too much. All right, and so the next topic I want to talk about is chain attack. And the first point is that you should always take the chain attack with Vivian. So boom, 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 you can see she gains 2 stacks. And the reason why you would do that is if you had no stacks, we just got 2 extra stacks from Vivian that we can use during the stun window. I know that there are a lot of you chain attack skippers. I am one of them, but for Vivian specifically, she gets those 2 stacks from chain attacking, which eventually convert later on. Now, I'm not saying that you should always take the chain attack. If you actually have a whole bunch of stacks, you could consider skipping Vivian, especially if you have 5 stacks, and just burn them all and just give your other teammates more time to deal damage in the stun state. All right, and so the next thing is that she is actually like the perfect character to do the Clang Clang, because again, when you do the Clang Clang, she gets 2 stacks. So she has 0 inner stacks right now. I'm going to wait for the Clang Clang, and right there, we are going to get those 2 inner stacks, which I can then convert into more stacks like that. Now, most Vivian teams are going to look like this one. We've got the Anomaly, we've got the Vivian herself, and then we finally got a support. And typically speaking, most of these characters, whether it's the Anomaly like the Miyabi or the Nicole, their Clang Clangs are very standard. It's not like they give a lot of extra effects. The only one that really stands out to me would be kind of like your Caesar, because she gives the defense down. Vivian is the second character to actually have additional effects on the Clang Clangs, i.e. getting those extra stacks. So therefore, you always want to parry, you always want to Clang Clang parry with Vivian. And if you're able to do so, I guarantee you're going to be able to maintain those stacks so freaking easily. There are going to be enemies that have multiple chain Clang Clangs, the most obvious one being Butcher. And when this happens, make sure you rotate back to Vivian as the last person to Clang Clang, because her stacks are only generated if she's able to use the follow-up attack after the Clang Clang. So just remember to Clang Clang with her last. Alright, all of that being said, let's talk about gear, and this one's super simple. Stat priority is definitely Anomaly Mastery and Anomaly Proficiency. Now, I know a lot of Anomaly characters, they also really want attack. Vivian still wants attack, but because of this skill over here, you can see all of these pretty numbers and all of that, blah, 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 they scale off of Anomaly Proficiency. This is a bloom. This is that extra off-field damage that Vivian does. So we very much want to prioritize Anomaly Proficiency AP over attack. And so if there was a disc, for example, 2 AP and 2 attack versus 3 AP and 1 attack, I would take the 3 AP every single time. All right, and so coming over to equipment, we've got the 4-piece Python set. This set was literally made for Vivian, like her umbrella, for God's sake, is the symbol. And then remember our priority on AP. We've got either Chaos Jazz for the plus 30 AP, or you can use Freedom Blues, which is also plus 30 AP. And so for disc 4, we're looking for AP and substat attack if possible. Disc 5, Ether damage, but if you do find something like pen ratio or something like that, which has really high anomaly proficiency, maybe got 3 hits into AP, I would definitely take that over like this kind of disc. And then disc 6, we're looking for anomaly mastery with anomaly proficiency as the substat. As for the W engine, it is definitely Weeping Gemini, because this bad boy just gives so much AP. But if you don't have Weeping Gemini but a fat wallet, then you can go for the sucky. Nobody's ever said no to getting blown, but realistically speaking, like this bad boy Weeping Gemini is actually craftable, so there's not really any excuse. The last W engine to talk about would be Grace's one right here, and this guy, it is good, but if you do have the fusion compiler, the Grace's signature, it would do a lot more work if you just put it onto your main fielder. In this case, it's Yanagi, or it could be your Miyabi, or whoever it is. Alright, my degens, this was kind of a pretty long video. Hopefully you guys don't get too bored and are able to learn something. And if there was anything that I did miss, or any mistakes that I've made, or other tips that would actually help all of us, then let us know down in the comments below. We would all really appreciate that. But otherwise, I am having a whole bunch of fun with Vivian. I hope you are as well. But this is the end of the video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.